got that
If you
guaranteed.
need $3, I'll send it to you.
Okay, we'll call the July 10th, 2019 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. First thing on the agenda, non-public session. I believe we do.
Yeah, we do under real estate.
And we also need it under A, public employee hiring.
Okay. Okay, approve the minutes of June 19th, 2019. Could I entertain a motion to table these, please?
I'll move that we table these minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next thing on our agenda is public hearings, temporary event permits. Kingswood Youth Center to host a chili cooking contest fundraiser on September 14th, 2019, 15 North Main Street from 11:30 to 2:30. Somebody here for that?
Mr. Chairman, I think he was here last time and gave us the information, and we knew he wasn't going to come again tonight.
Okay.
I'm looking for a judge.
Oh, I've already volunteered for that one. Unless you want it.
No, you can't.
Would you like a motion on
Would you
that?
make a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the temporary event permit for the Kingswood Youth Center to host a chili cooking contest on September 14th, 2019 at 15 North Main Street from 11:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next one is Beverage Craft Beer and Soap Company to host a beer festival for Camp Sunshine at 391 Pine Hill Road, Abenaki Ski Area on July 27, 2019 from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Anybody here for that one? This is one I believe they've done before a couple times.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, but we do not have a site map, and it is my understanding that we also need to hold a public hearing because they're going to serve alcohol. And I'm just from the notes that it looked like we need to do that on the 24th. So if we approve this, I'd like to see us get a map so we know where it's going to happen, and that we make it contingent on getting approval for an alcohol permit on July 24th.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion, yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we have a public hearing. This one is one that we have to read the entire thing for, unless Josh would like to read it all.
No.
We have copies if you want it.
Town of Wolfeboro will hold 2 consecutive public hearings on Wednesday, July 10th, 2019, 6:30 p.m. at the Great Hall, Wolfeboro Town Hall, 84 South Main Street, Wolfeboro, New Hampshire, 03894, to hear public comment on a proposed community development block grant application to the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority and related planning documents. Up to $500,000 annually is available to communities or counties on a competitive basis for housing and public facilities, economic development, emergency activities that directly benefit low and moderate income persons. Up to $12,000 is available for feasibility study grant. Proposal to be heard includes, number 1, public hearing for the purpose of receiving public input and taking action on a proposed housing and public facilities grant application for up to $500,000 in CDBG funds to be subgranted to Gala for the renovation of Gala Makerspace and Business Incubator, and to authorize the town manager to sign, submit, and execute any documents may be necessary to officiate the CDBG application. Public hearing. Number 2, a public hearing for the purpose of receiving public input and taking action to adopt Town of Wolfeboro anti-displacement and relocation plan for this project. doesn't say that here, but that's fine. Okay, we'll do,
We can
the
fix
first one I read. There's a public hearing. This has to do with the purpose of receiving public input. Okay. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, close the public hearing on number 1. Okay, the second hearing, the second part of this, is a public hearing for the purpose of receiving public input and taking action to adopt the Town of Wolfeboro anti-displacement relocation plan for this project. Interested persons are invited to attend and comment on the proposed application and planning documents. Please contact the Town of Wolfeboro, 569-8161. If you need assistance to attend or participate in the hearing. Anyone wishing to submit a written comment should address them to the Town Manager, Town of Wolfeboro, 84 South Main Street, Wolfeboro, 03894. Yeah. Do we need to act on that one now, or through the rest of it?
That's the public comment, see if there's any public comment in the public hearing.
Okay. Is there any public comment?
It should be,
Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Okay, so the next public hearing,
if I may, I think, what, and I'm trying to catch up on this, the document which you read is the notice. When you go on to page 2, that's actually the script that has to be read into the minutes for the motion, which needs to be approved based on those scripts.
Paul was going to read that, or are you going to read it?
So I think, because I know it's a lot of reading, I'm happy to read the script for Section 1 and Section 2.
Okay.
No problem doing that. Just point out that I did provide my copy to Mr. O'Brien, so I'm without. I'm just kidding. No, that's all. I'm all set. I've got it right here. So I'm just going to read this for the record into the minutes. The purpose of the public hearings required for CDBG funding is to solicit the views of citizens on community development, furnish the citizens with information concerning the amount of funds available and the range of community development activities which may be undertaken under the Community Development Act. CDBG funds are awarded on a competitive basis in New Hampshire and may be used for housing rehabilitation, public facilities, and economic development, which primarily benefit low to moderate income persons. A community or county may apply for up to $500,000 a year for public facilities / housing rehabilitation, up to $500,000 a year in emergency, up to $500,000 a year for economic development projects, as well as up to $500,000 a year in emergency funds. Feasibility study grants are available for up to $12,000 per year. Up to $750,000 is available for entities providing training and technical assistance for micro enterprises. And just so everybody knows, there is a handout available, which I have with me if you need a copy of this, that tells you a little bit about what the project actually is that's being undertaken or proposed to be undertaken by the grant application. And with that, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to reopen the public hearing for grant submissions, might be a good time to do that.
Okay. Anybody have any comments, any additions to this?
I would just note that in the public comment here that the proposal being considered for the Selectmen this evening is a CDBG, or the Commissioners, is a CDBG Housing and Public Facilities application for $500,000, and that is for the rehabilitation of the building at 23 Bay Street in Wolfeboro, New Hampshire, for the purposes of developing a community makerspace, which, if you don't know what that means, Josh Arnold is here to answer all of your questions about that. It's not my expertise. The funds, less administrative costs, will be subgranted to Global Awareness Local Action, otherwise known within the community as GALA.
Okay, is there any public comment on this? Okay. Want to go to the next one? Yeah.
Yep. And
I'll open the public hearing number 2.
Perfect. This public hearing number 2 is regarding the adoption of the anti-displacement and relocation plan for this project. And just going off script for a second, the board may remember this process as part of the CDBG application back in 2018. This may ring a bell for you. The only change to the plan in front of you is simply a date change, and the nature of the project being now the implementation. With that said, If any displacement takes place as a result of this project, the Uniform Relocation Act must be followed, which requires that any displaced household or business in a project using any federal funds must be found comparable housing or a place of business in a comparable neighborhood at a comparable price. Under the certification section of the application, the county, or in this case the town, as this should read, will certify that the Resident Anti-Displacement and Relocation, or RARA, or RARA perhaps, plan is in place. And in the event it is discovered that this specific project does displace persons or households, a displacement implementation plan must be submitted to CDFA prior to obligating or expending funds. And just so you know, there will be no displacement as a result of this project, at least as proposed.
Okay, is there any public comment on this application? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Somebody like to make some motions? Do that.
Motion, I move to support submission of a CDBG Housing and Public Facilities application for $500,000 on behalf of the GALA Makerspace Project at 23 Bay Street in Wolfeboro, and authorize the town manager to sign, submit, and execute any documents that may be necessary to effectuate the CDBG application and contract.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now.
We have a second motion here.
Make a second motion. Somebody like to read that one?
I'll move to adopt the Town of Wolfeboro Anti-Displacement and Relocation Assistance Plan for the GALA Makerspace Project.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks.
That was a tough one.
Now the chairman will do a who.
Blocked. Okay, next on our agenda is a bulk vote. Bulk vote consists of weekly manifests, tends to cut, property tax refund and abatements, exemptions and credits. That's what we have this week.
Hi, guys.
Would you like a motion?
Please.
I'll make a motion to accept the bulk vote.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Next on our agenda are appointments. Okay, we have one appointment as an alternate member to the Economic Development Committee, Robin Masteller. We want to make a motion for that?
I move that we nominate, or that we accept Wolfeboro Economic Development Committee alternate member Robin Masteller,
For a three-year term?
whatever the term.
Three-year term expiring March 2021.
For the term expiring on March 2021.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next on our agenda is resignation from the Conservation and Milfoil Committee member, Robert Pierpont.
I move that we accept his resignation.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next we have Lakes Region Planning Commission, Transportation Advisory Committee, TAC. Member Dave Ford to be reappointed.
I move that we reappoint Dave Ford to the Transportation Advisory Committee for one-year term expiring July 2020.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next we have Lakes Region Planning Commission, Transportation Advisory Committee, TAC, an alternate, Matt Sullivan. This is for 1 year.
I'll move to appoint Matt Sullivan as an alternate member of the LRPC Transportation Advisory Committee for a one-year term expiring July 2020.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, our discussion is on our, is technology update. Troy?
Good evening. I just wanted to, at the last meeting, I mentioned I did want to come back to you and not just give you financial updates, but report back to various activities that are occurring that are underneath my scope of control. I do want to thank the board and the town manager for allowing the opportunity for the finance department to have more training in MuniSmart. I think that was very profitable for the town. During that review, it was discovered that we could actually become more efficient with our processes, reduce paper costs, particularly the triplicate and the PO paperwork that we have, in order by doing it electronically within the system, setting up proper authority, levels of authority. There is a bank reconciliation module currently. The bank reconciliation process is a 25-hour ordeal in Excel to manage, to reconcile to Treasurer John Burt's records. The module within the software actually will do it for you. Just that feature hasn't been used. And then we also discovered there's a separate module that we can segregate the general ledger for capital project costing, where we can establish a project in there, capture all the costs to that various project across all various POs, and therefore you can get a true cost of what each individual project costs. So currently, the way to do that, we would have to run various Excel worksheets and try to drill down through top-level general ledger data and interfere with a lot of department heads to get the number for you. So those are ways that with our current core processing system that we could gain some efficiency. In addition, we had worked a little more to refine the inventory list of our current technology. We have some room for improvement there, and that's going to be an ongoing project to reconcile our records with Block 5's records, but that effort is going to continue. It was determined that based on the budget from last year's budget, that Block 5 had budgeted that they were going to put in new servers in the rack downstairs. When I first got here, it was unknown whether that work had been completed. It has been completed. They are installed. But what we've realized through the process is that we have a little bit of a communication breakdown. So we're going to work on building that, making sure we are more effective with transfer of knowledge, that we're well aware of what activities Block 5 is doing, what type of contacts they're receiving, and that we're managing those requests. So we can, the goal is to start creating a more comprehensive, systematic strategy around our technology portfolio. And with that is, we want to look at our telecommunications, our data providers, all hardware, all software, just to ensure that it meets our current needs and our future needs while minimizing costs to the town. So it's a major undertaking that we're starting to evaluate, and we're going to look to build out a project plan, look to engage the ISAC members to really, I think, formulate that committee to reach maximum effectiveness. Does the board have any questions? Linda?
Yes, under the last administration, we were told that our MuniSmart program would no longer be supported by MuniSmart, and that we didn't have all the support. And I just want to know, have you had a conversation? Are they able to do that now, give us that kind of support, or are we going to have to upgrade the program?
So MuniSmart is owned by Harris Technologies. Harris Technologies is no longer adding additional functionality to the MuniSmart platform. However, there are tools out there that we can maximize our core, the MuniSmart platform, and keep it for an extended period of time, as well as we're discovering in review of MuniSmart, it actually hasn't been used to its full capabilities. So I think it's a little premature right at this year to be talking about any replacing of the core.
They were saying they no longer gave support, so what I'm gathering, you do get support from
You will
MuniSmart.
get current support
Okay.
for the product we have. It's just no new updates. So what you
Okay.
have is what you get.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Munismart didn't exist, what would it cost to put in another system, and what would the other system be?
So there's a lot of vendors out there right now, and the top space probably for this size town is AccuFund. That's out there. That's put out by, it's resold by Bloom Shapiro. For this size town, that'd be spitballing, you'd be looking at close to 100,000 for the implementation and support and licensing.
Anybody have any other questions for Troy?
I just want to thank him for the report. That's nice, it keeps us up
Thank
to
you very
date.
much for what you just told us.
Thank you.
Good clarity.
Okay, the next is going to be a discussion on cyanobacteria beach closure procedure. Ford.
The flow chart.
Hello, Dave Ford here, Public Works, and the chairman of the Cyanobacteria Committee, a subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen. And that committee's been hard at work. We have a lot of great people and volunteers and a lot of action going on. At our last meeting, we had a discussion on the protocol for cyanobacteria identification and reporting. It was brought to you, and we approved it, and it was a little in narrative form. We wanted to make sure we had the key flow chart, so I developed a draft flow chart, and during our discussions, the question came up, and maybe we should go through the flow chart. Would that be helpful, you think, before we get to why we're here? So again, the intent was to make sure that the town reacts quickly in case we have an event. And unfortunately, we had an event last year. It was at the end of August, beginning of September. And what happens is when a reported bloom comes, and again, develop this flow chart. Oh, you're showing it?
Yep,
okay.
I am.
And normally, anyone who sees a potential bloom is to call a hotline number from New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. That person then would get out as soon as possible, look at it, test it, and then make a determination if it was in fact cyanobacteria. If so, the state then would issue an advisory warning the public that the water is potentially unsafe due to the cyanobacteria, even though at that point they may not know if the cyanobacteria will be toxic. But at that point, it's an advisory and it tells you what's going on. We went and approved a protocol because we want to be more proactive, and because there's only one really full-time person at DES who has to cover all the lakes in the whole state. We have created what we call the Wolfeboro Hub, so that if a report goes into DES, we're also, and we've gone and working on the communicating this to the public, that the report can also go to the Wolfeboro Hub, so that now we are acting to assist DES. We will be working in coordination, not working alone. It's their responsibility. We're there to support them, in which case we would document the report. We potentially take a sample. We could store it for later analysis, and/or we could do our testing. And we have been developing a whole resource of people to help do that. We would feed that information back to DES. They make their assessment. They make the call, either yes, we have cyanobacteria, or no. If it's a no, the notification goes back to the hub and to the original reporter saying, thank you, but it was not cyanobacteria, and the status would go back to blue. So again, I forgot about my color chart here. So blue was all good. If we go to report, we're in a green phase. We're not sure, we reported it. So in this report phase, again, DES gets the information, they assess it. No, we go back to blue. If they look at it and said, hey, it is cyanobacteria, we go to red. They issue an advisory. Now the advisory comes out, and it's a posting they would put at the beach. We felt that maybe we should need to do more than that to notify the public. So we've gone through and making sure that we would notify the town manager, the chair of the Cyanobacteria Committee, and the Public Works Director, and all the subcommittee chairs, as well as the Board of Selectmen, the health officer, and the head of the Affected Lake Association, to make sure the word got out there, so in case someone didn't see the sign, they knew what it was, and that would get out there. But the question was, does that mean the beach is closed? And that's where we came up with, the town would have an advisory which say, hey, it's not safe to go there. And that was this question, whether we have to or don't have to. The issue came up, and we thought it was important enough to bring it to your attention to see what you thought, whether we would automatically close the beach, or would we, again, stand behind the state advisory, which is recommending no one go into the water or use or drink the water? Any questions on that? I kind of get talking quickly, and I believe the other aspect too is if there could be potential where it was cyanobacteria, and if we tested quickly and found that it was not toxic, that's the other issue. So there's one thing complicated about this cyanobacteria, that when it blooms, and it blooms normally when the water is very warm, when there's calm conditions, and when there may be excess stormwater bringing excess nutrients into the lake. And when these blooms occur, it can be all different strands of bacteria, cyanobacteria. And you really don't know if it's toxic until the bacteria actually dies, and that's when it gives off its toxin. So you have to do, at first identification, is it cyanobacteria? Then you have to do additional testing to find out, is it toxic? And those are the two things we would be, once we know it's cyanobacteria, boom, go to red stage, you post it, then we got to make the decision. And that could be, and the other question is, if you're only meeting twice a month, is it something that the board would then maybe delegate to the town manager and staff to say, under the situation, the Board of Selectmen is aware, and our standard protocol is to do what? Either post or just stand behind the New Hampshire DES.
I have a question, and I think if we have an advisory at the beach, I would support closing it, but I don't know how far distance from that beach there's an outbreak. So let's say on Wentworth, there's Albee Beach, but the outbreak's at the other end of the lake. I wouldn't feel that if it's at the other end of the lake that you would then close. So we're going to have to come up with a distance from where it is, and then I think that would govern whether we close the beach.
I would expect it is only the town property that we could close. I think it's important that we get the advisory out to as many people as possible, and that goes to the communication. We want to make sure everyone knows about it. They only get the advisory. We can't close, we can't tell them not to go into the water.
I guess what I'm saying is, would we close Albee Beach if the outbreak was at the other end of the lake?
No.
Okay, so there needs to be us to define a distance from the beach that we would not notify and a distance that we would close the beach. We're going to notify, but, well, okay, if we have an outbreak and Winter Harbor.
Yes.
Okay, we aren't going to put an advisory, let's say it's at the Libby Museum. We're not going to close Cary Beach if it's way over it. So what I'm saying, the cyanobacteria outbreak is how far from that beach before we close it?
Linda, that's an excellent question. We actually hadn't thought about that. Now I see what you're saying. So the situation is, because we're going to be looking all over. Normally, they're only looking at the beaches. Mm-hmm. And that's where we saw it last time, and that's where it came up. But now that we have eyes on the lake, and we have lots of eyes, we intend on catching it sooner. So we could have an advisory that impacts the harbor, but may not have reached the beach, and vice versa. So that actually brings in another complexity to it. What I was talking about here was specifically if the cyanobacteria was within the buoyed out swimming area. That's when we would think about closing the beach. If it's just out in the harbor, then it's advisory and it's out there, and we should be looking daily to see if it does come in, because more than likely the wind will drift in. Unfortunately, that's one of the unfortunate parts about Cary Beach is the way the prevailing wind is. When these bloom, they can float right towards the beach. So
You might want to check with Jack Parsons up in Tuftonboro, because he's had over the years a lot of blooms in Mirror Lake along the whole length of Lang Pond Road on Mirror Lake.
yes,
And they have closed that off
yes.
when they've had that. And I don't know if he has anything in his regulations as far as distance, but I know that he has marked everything from the Wolfeboro town line all the way down around that whole corner when that was completely green all the way out a couple hundred feet there one year.
Right.
And he's also the health officer, so he may be able to give you some information on that. I would just suggest you might want to contact him. Sure. Because he's had that experience already.
I don't think they're able to define distances with uniformity. As you say, the Cary Beach or Winter Harbor, where I happen to live, the 9/10 of the time of the summer, the prevailing wind blows the top few inches of water toward Cary Beach, and then there's undertow taking it back. So any cyanobacteria that's out in the Broads is going to wind up in the Cary Beach within a day. So, you'd have to carry it all off. On the other hand, the other branch of Winter Harbor toward Libby, that doesn't have that situation. So if you get super technical, you're going to have to look at each situation.
Yeah, I think what I'm talking about specifically is the beach area, and you're all correct. So once we see it, we would be forewarned and say, okay, we're waiting. But at the time when it shows up within the swimming area, the question is, the state will post the advisory, the committee will get the advisory out to as many people as possible to warning them of the potential issue, and the only question is that enough? Or do we say, beach closed, we don't want even people sitting here? Because that's the question. A lot of people just go to sit there to read a book, and some people will say, well, I don't care, I'm going to go in the water anyways.
I think we close the beach. I mean, if our thing is public safety and we have a warning and we don't know if it's toxic, I think we have to close it. It's
So
my
that's your
opinion.
decision, and then it can
That's
be
my
then delegated
opinion.
to the health officer, which I think makes a lot of sense, because again, you have someone who can respond quicker than the board could, and someone who knows what they're looking for. Okay, so that's something to think about. I don't know if you want to discuss it further, make a decision tonight, but that was the question.
I like your diagram.
Well, again, I apologize.
You
I'm
might
not the
want
most-
to refine it a little bit.
It
But
was-
I like the idea of how you broke it down and how it goes back.
Yeah, it's a draft, and I'm working on my computer skills. One of these days, I'm going to figure out how to use a computer to do a flow chart, but the old-fashioned way. But so that is a draft. We will be discussing it with the committee, and then as far as the selectmen go right now, do you want to say we will close the beach and take a vote on that, or do you want to delegate it, or do you want to wait on the decision until a later date?
I think let them look at this,
Okay.
the group.
Yep.
We're not in a situation yet,
Right.
but the sooner we can get it back to us to make a decision. I happen to agree with Linda. I think we ought to close the beaches if we have something that is in, say, Winter Harbor.
Yep.
And the prevailing winds are right to the beach.
Yep.
I don't think to be
Better
in
to be
question, we
precautious.
post it anyway.
I agree. Okay.
Something, Dave, something else to think about. So I guess the number was 80 people, 90 people got trained on how to test.
That's correct. I would say right around there.
No, it seemed to me if and we won't even use a specific beach, but it seemed to me if somebody saw a bloom at a location, it would seem to me that the folks who live around that location who are also testers might want to just, be called into action to, kind of test the adjacencies to it, right? One of the things we're trying to do in our little team is to lay a map of the town out and then have where the people who are testers live just on the map, so that any person could look down on a screen and say, wow, we've got the entire town pretty well covered with testers. So if an episode occurred on a beach, or if it occurred in the middle of a waterway, and I'll say right off the Libby, then that team might want to just go into action and kind of test the adjacent areas. So something to think about on the tester side, but I agree with Linda. If we have to close the beach, it's a public safety issue.
Okay.
We'll close the beach.
That's great, and then we'll be meeting again first Monday in August, and hopefully we can finalize this and be prepared, ready to move quickly. I think we're all in agreement then.
Yeah, but if we had an outbreak before we get back to that, I think the board should vote if there is an advisory by the state at Cary Beach, Albee Beach, Brewster Beach, that we give authority to the town manager and his staff to close the beach.
Second.
I was going to agree with that, because like I said, we're right in that prime season. We're having our 90-degree weather here. I don't know what time of year it was last year that this.
End of August.
End of August,
end
a
of
little
August.
later, but
Labor Day weekend.
and I wouldn't want to have to wait for a board to meet again, have to make a decision whether to close it at that time. We don't meet for 2 weeks. I'd like to, appoint either the town manager, health officer, or whatever, however we decide to do it, so they could act immediately on our behalf to do that, so.
I agree with that.
In favor of that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
David.
Ian had a question. Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify something. I went to the session, and it was not testing training. It was observatory training.
That's correct. It was,
So,
yes.
So when you're talking about all those 80 people,
yeah.
at some point, the training was lightened up by, I don't know, some conversation.
Okay.
So that those 80 or 90 are not testers, they're observers. They were given,
That's
Linda
correct.
was there.
So
And the
how many people?
testers are getting water samples, and they're coming into the town, they're being picked up.
But that's a
and
different
then-
exercise.
That's all, those testers are coming in, all right?
But they're not cyanobacteria testers.
No, it's going to come in to the hub. We are going to have it tested by somebody who's certified.
Yeah.
Whether it's DES, whether it's somebody here in town.
I just wanted to clarify the understanding.
No, thanks for
Because
that.
those 80 or 90 are not going to be,
Yeah, they're not physically testing, they're collecting a sample and they're delivering it to a drop-off point.
That's right, that's what he's talking about.
Not the, You're
that
talking about-
session? That session
No,
did
it has
not
nothing
teach
to,
it.
no,
Okay.
it was not part of that session. That session was to teach the layman who sees something in the water.
Absolutely.
Knowing whether, and I know if I can put my hand and pick it up and it has a texture to it, looks like, it's not cyanobacteria. If you put a stick in and you pull it out and it sticks to it, it's not. All
There were
right?
two, so Warren Muir has been training people to test the water generally. Okay?
Bring samples in, yes.
Yes. The cyanobacteria training was observatory. So I just wanted to make sure there are two separate things.
Absolutely, and the testers are bringing it in, and if somebody, a tester, we sent them out to look at a site that was cyanobacteria, it would come in, it would be shipped to DES, or somebody locally who has the expertise would check it out. Am I
Typically,
correct?
what Warren's going to do is if his water testers, from what I understand, if his water testers see cyanobacteria, he's actually going to go out with them because it's fairly technical. And that training over there was not
So
technical.
then there's, thanks for the clarity, so there's two things. There are people who will observe, and that's a quantity of people, and
Yeah.
then there are people who
That's the
are...
80 or 90.
That's the 80, thank you for that. And then there are people who are actually going to collect a sample.
They're going to do general water
They're
testing.
going to do a general test. And we should know, that's a subset, I would think, of those 80 or 90. Dave's going to clarify.
I think so, yeah. And, well, so let me just, so Wentworth has always been testing its water, but not for cyanobacteria. So now we will also have different people testing for cyanobacteria because it's more technological. But I just wanted to clarify that
Thanks
it's
for
not
that.
80 or 90
So roughly
testers.
speaking on Wentworth, how many would you say are testers?
Well, we've had water testers. We have the lake mapped out in
30,
quadrants.
5, 20, 1?
We probably have a team of 15 or so.
So 15, okay.
And they have their territory and they do their testing on a regular basis, and they've been doing it for 35 years.
Yeah, okay, good.
There's been water testing, but not cyanobacteria testing.
Right.
We are going to buy a kit and do our testing on Wentworth, just so we don't, just because
Missed the opportunity.
we can, and we have Julie who's a scientist.
Yeah.
So we're going to have people bring in samples and stuff, so.
And that's what I understand,
That's
it's
a
going to come into Warren or
Yeah,
somebody else that we have who has the knowledge to see if it's cyanobacteria.
Yeah, since we have an infrastructure in place. So the testing that the real test, hands-on testing is basic water testing that Winnie hasn't been doing.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing about cyanobacteria that I might have gotten lost in the conversation that totally blows my mind is once the bloom is gone, it can still be toxic. So that's something to think about with beach closings, that follow-up testing should make sure before, just because it looks good doesn't mean it is good.
Right.
I think we would definitely have that. I think
Ann.
that's part of the procedure in here. Yeah, you're right, Ann.
David?
Right, so there's a little confusion there, but, so the different levels
I
are...
created it, I apologize.
Right. The water quality testing is now doing more locations more frequently, so we're trying to figure out where the problem is coming from. So that's what the water testers are doing on a regular basis. So we're testing certain parameters in the lake to understand better the health of the lake. The people that were brought in, the 70 people, it was to see, oh, that's a bloom and not a bloom. That's only that they're observers to make a report. There are only a few people, I think 3 or 4, who went through the actual testing. Once we know, oh, there's a report, and if the state can't get there, Warren or one of his core people who have had the advanced training, so we only have a handful of those. And they have those little buckets where they then scoop it in a volumetric. So so we only have a few of the actual cyanobacteria, and you only test it when you actually see a bloom. So that's good that we have 80 eyes out there, and we have your handout cards, so anyone can get the cards. We have them all over the place, and go on, you can learn about it. So to know the difference between regular, and if you have any confusion, you call the hotline, we start the process, and you start high level, then you get the specialists, you take the sample, get it to DES, or if we can run it to our lab right away. And like Ann said, we have to be careful, because the danger is not when it's blooming, it's when it starts to die.
So remove the word tester, insert the word observer, and the principle stays the same. If there is a place that a bloom has been sighted, something to think about would be to dispatch observers in the adjacent areas, just to, kind of cover the waterfront, pardon the pun, but to kind of look at it, and then, it might get at the question I think that Linda was asking, that says, if you have an event on Site A, do you close a lake? Do you close the Winter Harbor? Probably not.
I was talking about how far, what do you...
We need to, we want to make sure we have adjacent observing going on, and thank you for that clarity, and I appreciate that.
Okay, next on the agenda is Bay Street Sidewalk Stakeholder Meeting Update.
Right. The Planning and Public Works Department held a stakeholder meeting on Monday, the June 24th. We had a really good attendance, and since then we have other people kind of comment. The meeting was focusing to listening to stakeholders' problems and concerns. One of the problems I've learned over years is engineers sometimes love to solve problems, and sometimes you let them go, and before you know it, they're solving the wrong problem. So we really have, I think, and been successful in looking at the context-sensitive solution process, in which we really want to make sure the stakeholders, the people who live on Bay Street, the businesses, the property owners, the people who walk there, who travel, who use the right-of-way, all have an opportunity to tell us what's the problem out there and what are your concerns. And that was a good meeting, and we had a lot of people hands-on to talk to that. And now we're taking all that information, and we're looking at it and kind of putting it in groups, and then trying to say, okay, if we're concerned about speed, how do we address that with a solution? So we're going to be looking at different solutions, and we're going to come back on the follow-up meeting. And that's where we want to come to the Board of Selectmen to say if it was okay to hold up our follow-up meeting, in which we can bring back potential alternative solutions that would meet the needs and the problems, and hopefully create a solution that would meet the vision the master plan has, would meet the majority of our needs in terms of what the people want, and then hopefully it's something that we can afford to build, or maybe we can do it in phases. So we have a lot of different ideas we're working on, and we did want to make sure that the Board of Selectmen was okay. We wanted to check our schedules. It's so hard and so busy in the summer months, but we wanted to keep the ball rolling. We have some momentum. So Monday night, the 29th, is what we're asking, if that's okay.
What time, David?
It would be a 6:30 meeting. I think that's a...
6:30?
Yep. And we would hold it right here. And if we're okay with that, then we had everyone who came. Most of the people, we did get email addresses, so we have a list that's going to go out to them. Right. And we're also, again, going to get their feedback. And just because you didn't make the first meeting doesn't mean you can't come here. Please, if you're interested, if you want to come and observe, and even if you don't use Bay Street much, if you're a taxpayer, please come and attend. It's a good process, and it's good to get out and meet with your neighbors and discuss those things. So we'll go forward with that the 29th, and then once we get those results, we'll be back to the board with an alternative, hopefully, that the majority supports. And then if the board is okay, we would then look at putting that into the capital process for next year. Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, David. Yep. Next on our agenda is other business. Is there any?
I have other business, and Dave Ford is here. On July 17th, we're going to hold the public hearing with New Hampshire DOT with crosswalks and rumble strips. This is a public hearing. We want to have public input. on how they feel about eliminating 2 crosswalks in Wolfeboro Falls and the expansion of rumble and mumble strips.
Okay, is there anything else? On the 17th.
On the 17th, 6:30 here at the town hall, I believe.
Here.
If you could go to the microphone,
Use the
we
microphone.
can't hear it.
I didn't know if anybody saw that they painted up Main Center Street,
Center
whatever
Street.
it is. And I think they added that rumble strip thing up further on where the 1810 barn is, all up to the 7-Eleven.
That's been there for.
It's been there.
Has that been there?
Yeah, quite a while.
Well, it's obvious now, but anyway, they painted the yellow line, so I didn't know if they're still willing to converse with you.
Yes, they are. They're scheduled to be here. The Deputy Commissioner for DOT will be here, and along with some of his associates to speak that evening.
And the reason is because they're going to be doing a new overlay. So this is the opportunity they're going to do another overlay. So now they can either put them back in, and whether or not they will put them in the fog lines where they have shoulders, but we don't think that's applicable. So it's just some discussion. This is the time that you can either take them out or do something different. So that's why it's coming back. No, actually, we researched it was very positive.
It looked, when they gave us a quick look at where they were going to pave, that they were going to try to bring the rumble strips back, kind of starting at the nick. It was hard for us to tell, but that's what it looked like. Have you seen any map of where they're proposing to start those rumble strips?
I
It was
have not.
kind of an odd meeting where they showed you nothing.
Right. I can reach out to them ahead of
Would you?
time, so maybe they can give us the limits. So that's a good idea. We should look into that. We'll do.
Thank you.
Okay, committee reports. Linda, you want to start?
Okay, I went to the Bay Street sidewalk public hearing, and I think, Paul, you and Dave joined me. The cyanobacteria training, I went to a milfoil joint board meeting, and the dash unit will not go in the water this year, and the committee is going to have to take a look at what we may do with the dash boat in the future, since most of the contractors who will pull milfoil have purchased their own boats. So we're going to have to decide what we want to do. With that, I've gone to the infrastructure and transportation master plan meeting, and we talked about docks, boats, parking lot, sidewalks, trees, dams, and bridges. And we're going to finalize some of that work. I went to the cyanobacteria. You saw the flow chart. I went to an energy committee meeting, and I'll let Paul deal with net metering. That's it.
David?
I did quite a few, attended quite a few civic things in the past 3 weeks and been real busy. And today I got a note that Brewster Academy is going to have a big gala to celebrate their 200th anniversary next year, and they wanted me to do some historical stuff, so I said I would do that.
Hey, I went to the ZBA meeting, cyanobacteria informational meeting at Brewster. Went to net metering. As Linda said, I also went to the sidewalk informational meeting that was here. Brad?
I had a planning board meeting last night with a boundary line adjustment and a work session. Last week, a week or so ago, we had a master plan committee meeting that Linda just talked about. And the end of the month, last month, we had a Friends of Living Museum meeting that I attended. That was it for me.
Mr. O'Brien, you're next. Sure.
Yep, I went to the Bay Street sidewalk meeting. I think Dave Ford did a great job, and I think the community showed up and had some great suggestions. That's going to be a tough one. Try to figure out how to make that work. Also went to a dockside meeting last week. That was interesting. We got a lot of work to do there, and I think Dave again is laying out a set of plans that we have to pray over. Along with Linda and Mr. Senecal, I went to the net metering meeting, and I think, folks, we need to kind of pay attention to this issue of net metering. Very important, and we have to be careful of how we approach this. It's a very important issue for our town. We had a cyanobacteria education committee meeting where we're working on putting together a request for qualification for a site, a place where we can host some content. We're also working with Matt and others on notification capabilities. And my favorite project will hopefully wrap up next week. We're going to be visited by U.S. Cellular, and we're going to be visited by T-Mobile. Same thing we've done all in the past. We've asked them to come on in, tell us what they plan to do. We want them to do things better. We want more coverage. We want more capabilities. We want lower prices. And so that'll wrap up next week, and then I'll hopefully be able to brief the public when we're done.
He said he can't
That's it.
regulate.
Hey, town manager's report?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank the staff of this town while I was on vacation. They did an amazing job between putting everything together for the 4th of July events to making the town work. I was bothered very little on my vacation, and we had a wonderful time. While I was on vacation, I did get to visit the General Wolfe statue, so we had a good chat while we sat there and overlooked the City of London.
Did you take a picture of it?
We did, yep.
Send it to me, please.
I will do that.
Did you bring back any beer?
No.
Okay.
Moving forward, I do have a couple of other items this evening. Pat Waterman has been recognized by the Municipal Clerk's Honor Roll. This is a nationwide recognition, and she has received a pin recognizing her as an outstanding and dedicated servant of clerks for the town of Wolfeboro. So we were to read that to you. And the one other thing that I would like to announce tonight is we do have, we've filled the HR finance officer's position, and that's been filled by Michelle Chamberlain. And that pretty much sums up what I have to say.
Okay. Any questions from the press? Okay. Any public input? 3 minutes limitation? Seeing none? Somebody like to make a motion to go into non-public?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, we'll go into non-public.